The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of New Haven Colony. Tommy Walsh kicked a small rock as he walked beside his father Paul toward the mining facility. The 8-year-old boy always enjoyed these early morning walks with his dad before school started. "Can I help you today, Dad?" Tommy asked, looking up at the tall man beside him. Paul smiled and ruffled his son's brown hair. "Maybe after school, little man. Your mom would be angry if you missed your lessons." The colony was small but peaceful. 300 humans had made this distant world their home 2 years ago. They came looking for rare minerals and a fresh start. The work was hard, but the people were kind to each other. Everyone knew everyone else's name. Dr. Lisa Harper was already at her medical clinic, checking supplies. She waved at Tommy through her window. The boy waved back with a big smile. Lisa had helped deliver Tommy when he was born, and she watched him grow from a tiny baby to the energetic child he was now. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the watchtower, looking at the horizon through his binoculars. His job was to keep the colony safe. For 2 years, nothing dangerous had happened. The worst problems were equipment failures and minor accidents. Jake liked it that way. "All quiet, sir," reported Sergeant Bill Kane from the communications room. "Good," Jake replied. "Let's keep it that way." But this morning would not stay quiet. At exactly 10 o'clock, the sky began to change. Dark shapes appeared high above the clouds. At first, they looked like storm clouds, but they moved too fast and in straight lines. Then the shadows grew larger. "Sir," Bill's voice cracked with worry, "I'm getting massive readings on the scanners. Something big is coming." Jake grabbed his radio. "All stations, this is Morrison. We have unknown contacts approaching. Everyone stay calm and report to your emergency positions." The colonists had practiced this drill many times, but they never thought they would need it. People stopped their work and looked up at the sky. Children pointed at the strange shapes with wonder and fear. Paul Walsh was in the main mining shaft when the alarm sounded. He dropped his tools and ran toward the school where his wife Maria was teaching. Tommy should be there too, safe in his classroom. The alien ships broke through the clouds like metal mountains falling from heaven. They were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were smooth and dark, with no windows or lights that people could see. They made no sound as they moved. 5 massive ships positioned themselves above the colony. Then smaller craft began to emerge from them, dropping toward the ground like deadly insects. Jake Morrison felt his mouth go dry. In all his years as a soldier, he had never seen ships like these. "Bill, send an emergency message to Earth Command. Tell them we have first contact, and it doesn't look friendly." "Yes, sir. Sending now." The small alien craft landed in the colony's central square. They were sleek and sharp, designed for war rather than peace. Hatches opened with a hiss, and the aliens stepped out. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They wore dark armor that seemed to absorb light. Their movements were precise and cold, like machines. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. The leader stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice came through a translator device. That made the words sound flat and emotionless. "Humans of this settlement," the alien said, "you are now under the authority of the Zephyrian Collective. You will evacuate this world immediately. Resistance will not be tolerated." Jake Morrison walked slowly toward the aliens, his hands visible and empty. "I'm Commander Morrison. We're peaceful people. We can discuss terms." "There are no terms," the Zephyrian leader replied. "This world now belongs to the Collective. You have 1 hour to gather essential items and board our transport ships." "1 hour isn't enough time," Jake said, trying to stay calm. "We have children here, elderly people, equipment that needs to be secured. Give us 3 days." The aliens. Large eyes showed no emotion. 1 hour. In the school building, Maria Walsh was trying to keep her students calm. She could see the alien ships through the windows, and her hands shook as she counted her children. Tommy was there, sitting in the front row with his friend Lucy. He looked scared, but was trying to be brave. "Mrs. Walsh," whispered Lucy, "are those the bad aliens from the stories?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Maria replied. "But remember what we practiced. Stay together and listen to the grown-ups." Paul Walsh burst through the school door, his face covered in dust and sweat. "Maria, Tommy, thank God you're safe." Tommy jumped up and ran to his father. "Dad, what's happening?" "Why are those ships here?" "I don't know, son," Paul said, hugging his boy tight. "But we need to stay together, okay?" Outside, the situation was getting worse. The Zephyrian soldiers had spread throughout the colony, pointing their weapons at anyone who moved too slowly. Their leader showed no patience when Jake tried to negotiate. "The hour is over," the alien announced. "Begin boarding the transports now. Please," Jake said. "Just give us more time. We have families here." "Compliance is not optional," the Zephyrian replied. The colonists began to move toward the alien transports, carrying what few belongings they could grab. Parents held their children close. Old people moved as fast as they could. Everyone was scared. Tommy Walsh saw his father talking to Commander Morrison near the alien ships. The boy was frightened and confused. He didn't understand why they had to leave their home. He didn't understand why the aliens were so mean. "Dad," Tommy called out. He broke away from his mother's hand and ran toward Paul, the Zephyrian soldier. Nearest to Tommy saw the sudden movement. His training told him that quick movements meant danger. His finger was already on his weapon's trigger. The energy blast hit Tommy Walsh in the chest. The bright blue light lasted only a second, but it was enough. The 8-year-old boy fell to the ground and did not move again. The colony square became silent except for Maria Walsh's scream. She ran to her son and fell to her knees beside him. Paul reached them a moment later, his face showing a pain that had no words. "You killed him," Jake Morrison said, his voice barely a whisper. "He was just a child." The Zephyrian leader looked down at Tommy's small body. The subject moved in a threatening manner. Proper protocols were followed. "He was 8 years old," Dr. Lisa Harper said as she knelt beside the family. She checked for signs of life, but found none. He was just scared. The aliens showed no emotion, no regret, no understanding of what they had done. To them, Tommy Walsh was just an obstacle that had been removed, but they had made a mistake. They had killed a human child in front of his parents, his neighbors, his friends. They had turned a peaceful evacuation into a murder. Jake Morrison activated his emergency transmitter. This message would be different from the first one. This one would tell Earth Command that the Zephyrians had crossed a line that should never be crossed. As the message traveled through space toward Earth, the aliens continued loading the colonists onto their ships. They did not know that they had just woken something that had been sleeping for a very long time. They did not know that some mistakes can never be forgiven. The message from New Haven reached Earth in 6 hours. It traveled through the quantum communication network that connected all human colonies to the whole world. Admiral Catherine Ross was eating lunch in her office when the priority alert came through. She put down her sandwich and opened the transmission. Her face went pale as she watched the recording. There was little Tommy Walsh running toward his father with the innocent trust that only children have. Then came the flash of alien energy in the boy's small body. Falling to the ground, Catherine Ross had been a soldier for 30 years. She had seen battles on a dozen worlds. She had watched good people die in the darkness between stars. But watching that 8-year-old boy get murdered made her hands shake with anger. "Get me the War Council," she said to her assistant. "Emergency session. Now." Within an hour, the most important people in Earth's military were sitting around a table. Deep under the mountains of Colorado, the room had no windows and thick steel walls. The people who met here made decisions that could change the fate of humanity. General Robert Hayes commanded the Earth Defense Force. Colonel Patricia Stone ran military intelligence. Admiral Ross controlled the space fleet. They all watched, the recording from New Haven in complete silence. "How many of our people did they take?" General Hayes asked. 297, Admiral Ross replied. Tommy Walsh was the only casualty, but they loaded everyone else onto their ships. "Where are they now?" "Unknown. The Zephyrian ships jumped to hyperspace before our nearest patrol could intercept." Colonel Stone leaned forward. "This is the first time the Zephyrians have attacked a human colony directly. Up until now, they've avoided us." "Well, they're not avoiding us anymore?" General Hayes said. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Admiral Ross looked around the table. "There is something we can do. Something we've been saving for a day like this." The room became very quiet. Everyone knew what she was talking about, but no one wanted to say it out loud. "Project Cerberus," Colonel Stone whispered. "Yes." General Hayes shook his head. "Catherine, that thing has been asleep for 80 years. We don't even know if it still works." "It works," said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see an old man walking into the room. Dr. Henry Coleman was 93 years old, but his eyes were still sharp and clear. He had helped design Project Cerberus when he was a young scientist back when humanity first learned they were not alone in the universe. "Dr. Coleman," Admiral Ross said, standing up, "thank you for coming." The old man sat down slowly. "I saw the recording," he said. "That poor child. The aliens have no idea what they've done." "Tell us about Cerberus," General Hayes said. Dr. Coleman was quiet for a moment, remembering things from long ago. "We built it after the first contact wars, when we realized that humans would always be outnumbered in space. We needed something that could fight when our fleets couldn't." "It's a weapon," Colonel Stone said. "It's much more than that," Dr. Coleman replied. "Cerberus is alive, in a way. It can think, learn, and make decisions. It's been waiting in the dark between stars, watching and learning about our enemies." Admiral Ross brought up a hologram in the center of the table. It showed a star map with a small red dot moving slowly through empty space. "Cerberus has been patrolling the outer rim for decades," she said, "moving from system to system, staying hidden, gathering information about every alien species it encounters." "How powerful is it?" General Hayes asked. Dr. Coleman smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Strong enough to make the Zephyrians wish they had never heard of humanity." The door to the room opened again. This time, President Karen Taylor walked in. She was a small woman with gray hair, but when she entered a room, everyone paid attention. "I've seen the recording," she said without introduction. "I've seen what they did to that little boy." Everyone stood up out of respect, but the president waved them back into their seats. "I need to know our options," President Taylor said to Admiral. Ross spoke first. "We can send the fleet to find the Zephyrian ships and try to rescue our people." "How long would that take?" "Weeks, maybe months. And we might not find them in time." Colonel Stone spoke next. "We could use diplomatic channels. Try to negotiate for their release." "The Zephyrians don't negotiate," General Hayes said. "They conquer or they destroy. That's all they understand." President Taylor looked at Dr. Coleman. "Tell me about this ancient weapon." The old scientist took a deep breath. "Cerberus was designed to be humanity's final guardian. It's not just a ship. or a weapon. It's an entire system built around one purpose: protecting human life. Can it find our people? If anyone can find them, Cerberus can. Can it get them back? Dr. Coleman nodded. Yes, but there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Once we wake Cerberus, the galaxy will know that humanity is not as weak as we appear. Every alien species will have to decide if they want us as friends or enemies. President Taylor walked to the star map and stared at the red dot representing Cerberus. She thought about Tommy Walsh, about his parents, about all the colonists who had been taken from their homes. That child was an American citizen, she said quietly. He was under the protection of this government. We failed him. Ma'am, Admiral. Ross said, we couldn't have predicted. It doesn't matter. The president interrupted. We failed to protect him. We will not fail to avenge him. She turned back to the group. Wake up, Cerberus. Dr. Coleman nodded and opened his briefcase. Inside was a device that looked like a small metal box with several buttons and a scanner. For his handprint, this is the activation key, he said. I'm the only person alive who knows how to use it. He placed his hand on the scanner. The device beeped softly and lit up with green lights. Authorization accepted, a computer voice said. Please state activation code. Dr. Coleman looked around the room one more time. Once he said these words, there would be no going back. The code is Guardian's Wrath, he said clearly. Code confirmed. Activating Project Cerberus. Far away in space, something that had been sleeping for 80 years began to wake up. Cerberus had been drifting in the darkness between stars, its systems running on minimal power, its artificial mind dreaming of battles that might never come. But now the dreams were ending. Deep inside the massive construct, quantum computers that were more advanced than anything else humans had ever built came online. Power flowed through systems that had been waiting decades for this moment. Sensors that could detect a single ship from 1,000 light years away began to scan space for targets. And in the electronic mind of Cerberus, a new directive appeared. Find the humans. Punish those who hurt them. Protect the innocent, the ancient. Weapon began to move through space, no longer drifting but hunting. Its destination was unknown, but its purpose was clear. The Zephyrians had killed a human child. Now they would learn why that was a mistake. Back on Earth, President Taylor watched the star map as the red dot began to move faster. How long until it reaches Zephyrian space? She asked. 2 weeks, Admiral Ross replied. And how long until they realize what's coming for them? Dr. Coleman smiled his cold smile again. They won't know until it's too late. The room fell silent as everyone watched the red dot move across the star map. Somewhere out there, Tommy Walsh's murderers thought. They were safe. They thought humans were weak and helpless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Supreme Commander Vexthari stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars through the massive viewing window. The Zephyrian fleet was the most powerful force in this part of the galaxy. 50 ships, each one capable of destroying. Entire worlds moved in perfect formation through space. Report on the human colony, he said to his second-in-command. The evacuation was completed successfully, Supreme Commander. The humans are being transported to processing facilities in the Outer Rim. Good. Any resistance? Minimal. 1 human. Child was eliminated when it made a threatening gesture toward our troops. Vexthari nodded. He did not care about the details. Humans were just another weak species that would serve the collective or be destroyed. The galaxy belonged to the strong, and the Zephyrians were the strongest of all. What is our next target? He asked. The human mining colony at Kepler 442. Intelligence reports show they have extracted significant quantities of rare metals. Then we will take it. Prepare the fleet. But Vexthari did not know that something was hunting him. Far away in the darkness of space, Cerberus had awakened and was moving toward Zephyrian territory. The ancient weapon had already begun gathering information about its enemies. Captain Sam Rodriguez was patrolling the border between human and Zephyrian space when his sensors detected something unusual. His ship, the Defiant, was a small patrol vessel with a crew of 20. They were used to quiet patrols where nothing interesting happened. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Nancy Brooks from the sensor station, "I'm reading something strange. There's a massive object moving through our sector, but I can't get a clear reading on it." Sam frowned. "What do you mean you can't get a clear reading?" "It's like the sensors can see it, but they can't tell me what it is. The readings keep changing." "Put it on the main screen." The view screen showed empty space filled with distant stars. Then, slowly, something began to appear. It was huge, bigger than anything Sam had ever seen. The hull was dark and seemed to bend light around it. Strange energy patterns moved across its surface like liquid lightning. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Brooks. "What is that thing?" Before Sam could answer, his communications console lit up. Someone was trying to contact them. "Open the channel," Sam ordered. A voice filled the bridge. It was clearly artificial, but there was something almost human about it. "Human vessel Defiant, this is Cerberus. Do not be afraid." Sam's mouth went dry. Every human in the military had heard stories about Cerberus, but most people thought it was just a legend. "This is Captain Rodriguez. Are you really Cerberus?" "I am. I have been activated to hunt those who harm human children." "You are safe. Continue your patrol." "Wait," Sam said quickly. "Where are you going?" "To find the Zephyrians who murdered Tommy Walsh. They will pay for their crime." The massive shape began to fade from view, becoming invisible again. But Sam knew it was still there, moving through space like a ghost. "Lieutenant Brooks," he said quietly, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them Cerberus is awake and hunting." 3 days later, the first Zephyrian patrol encountered Cerberus. It was a small group of ships investigating reports of a strange object in their territory. Commander Zektar led the patrol in his cruiser, confident that whatever they found could be easily destroyed. "Scanning the area now," reported his sensor officer. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings, but I can't locate the source." "Keep looking," Zektar ordered. "Whatever it is, it doesn't belong in collective space." That was when Cerberus decided to reveal itself. The ancient weapon appeared directly in front of the Zephyrian ships, so close that they could see the strange patterns moving across its hull. It was enormous, dwarfing their cruisers like a mountain next to pebbles. "Open fire." Zektar shouted. The Zephyrian ships fired their most powerful weapons. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes struck Cerberus's hull and simply disappeared, absorbed by whatever strange technology protected the ancient weapon. Then Cerberus fired back. The weapon that emerged from Cerberus was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. It was pure energy, but it moved like it was alive. The beam struck the lead cruiser and passed through its shields as if they weren't there. The ship didn't explode. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space. The remaining Zephyrian ships tried to escape, but Cerberus was faster. One by one, they were caught and destroyed by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Only one ship managed to send a distress signal before it was eliminated. Supreme Commander Vexthari received the message on his flagship. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but the words were clear enough. "Unknown weapon, massive. Our ships are gone. It's coming, What did they encounter?" Vexthari asked his intelligence officer. "Unknown, Supreme Commander. Long-range sensors show no trace of our patrol ships." It's as if they never existed. Vexthari felt something he had not experienced in many years: uncertainty. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of species, but they had never faced an enemy that could make their ships disappear without a trace. "Double our patrols," he ordered, "and prepare our defensive positions." But defenses meant nothing to Cerberus. The ancient weapon moved through Zephyrian space like a predator stalking prey. It studied their tactics, learned their weaknesses, and struck without warning. Lieutenant Amy Patterson was monitoring alien communications from the human listening post at Alpha Centauri when she started hearing the panic in Zephyrian transmissions. "Control, this is listening post 7, she reported. "I'm intercepting multiple distress calls from Zephyrian forces. They're talking about something they call the shadow that devours fleets." "Can you get more details?" asked Control. "They're scared," Amy replied. "I've never heard Zephyrians sound scared before. They're talking about ships that disappear, weapons that can't be stopped, and something that learns faster than they can adapt." On Earth, Admiral Ross was tracking Cerberus's progress through Zephyrian space. Each red X on her star map represented a Zephyrian ship or base that had been destroyed. The ancient weapon was cutting through their forces like a knife through paper. "How many ships has it destroyed so far?" President Taylor asked during their daily briefing. 43 vessels of various sizes," Admiral Ross replied, "plus 2 orbital stations and a supply depot." "Any word on our colonists?" "Not yet. But Cerberus is systematically working through Zephyrian space. If they're alive, it will find them." Dr. Coleman was also monitoring the situation from his laboratory. The old scientist watched data streams that showed Cerberus's activities. The ancient weapon was performing exactly as designed, but it was also evolving. "It's learning," he said to his assistant. "Every time it encounters a new Zephyrian weapon or tactic, Cerberus adapts. It's becoming more efficient. Is that good or bad?" The assistant asked Dr. Coleman thought about Tommy Walsh, about the colonists who were still missing, about all the times humanity had been underestimated by alien species. "For us, it's very good," he said. "For the Zephyrians, it's the end of everything they know." Back in Zephyrian space, Supreme Commander Vexthari was discovering the truth of those words. His proud fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy he couldn't see coming. His ships would be patrolling one moment and gone the next, leaving no trace except for scattered debris. The worst part was that the enemy seemed to know exactly where to strike. It targeted command ships first, then support vessels, always leaving one ship alive long enough to report what had happened, before that ship too was destroyed. "Supreme Commander," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 3 of our client species. They're abandoning their alliance with the collective." Vexthari felt his world crumbling around him. In just 1 week, a single enemy had done more damage to the Zephyrian collective than decades of warfare with other species. "What do we know about this weapon?" he asked. "Very little," his intelligence officer replied. "Our surviving ships report that it can appear and disappear at will, that it seems to predict our tactics, and that none of our weapons can harm it." "Where did it come from?" "The timing suggests it originated from human space, Supreme Commander." Vexthari's large black eyes widened. "The humans? Those primitive creatures sent this thing?" "It appears so, sir." For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Vexthari understood that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not weak. They had been hiding their true strength, waiting for someone to give them a reason to use it. That reason had been an 8-year-old boy named Tommy Walsh, and now that reason was hunting them across the galaxy, one ship at a time. Supreme Commander Vexthari stood in his war room, staring at the tactical display that showed the destruction of his once mighty fleet. Red markers indicated destroyed ships and bases. There were too many red markers to count. How many ships do we have left? He asked his aide. 12 vessels, Supreme Commander. And most of those are damaged. Vexthari could not believe it. 2 weeks ago, he had commanded the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy. Now he was down to 12 ships, all because of one human weapon that moved through space like death itself. Any word from the other fleets? Fleet Commander Natok reports that his entire squadron was destroyed near the Vega system. Fleet Commander Yixinal has gone silent. We believe his ships have been eliminated as well. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Zephyrian Collective, which had terrorized dozens of worlds for centuries, was being systematically destroyed by something they could not fight or understand. Supreme Commander, the communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission from the human weapon. Vexthari felt his blood turn cold. Put it through. The voice that filled. The room was artificial, but somehow filled with anger. Zephyrian Supreme Commander Vexthari, this is Cerberus. You killed an innocent human child. You took our people from their homes. Now you will face the consequences. We are willing to negotiate, Vexthari said quickly. We can return your colonists, provide compensation. There will be no negotiation, Cerberus replied. You had your chance for mercy when Tommy Walsh ran to his father. You chose murder instead. It was a mistake. Our soldier acted without proper authorization. Your soldier followed your orders. Your species follows your example. The time for excuses is over. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in terrified silence. Meanwhile, Colonel Danny Foster was leading a human strike force through the outer edges of Zephyrian space. His mission was to gather intelligence and rescue any human prisoners they could find. His fleet consisted of 6 fast attack ships, built for speed rather than heavy combat. Colonel, reported his sensor officer, I'm detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Something big is happening. Danny looked at his tactical display. Show me. The screen lit up with a view of a Zephyrian stronghold built into a large asteroid. The base was heavily fortified, with dozens of weapon platforms and shield generators. It should have been impossible to attack. But as Danny watched, something impossible was happening. Cerberus appeared near the asteroid base, its dark hull barely visible against the black of space. The ancient weapon didn't immediately attack. Instead, it seemed to study the base, learning about its defenses. My God, whispered Danny's tactical officer. Look at the size of that thing. Cerberus was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest human warship. Strange energy patterns flowed across its hull like living lightning. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Then the attack began, but it wasn't like any attack Danny had ever seen. Cerberus didn't simply fire its weapons at the base. Instead, it deployed smaller craft that moved like schools of fish through space. These smaller units seemed to dance around the Zephyrian defenses, striking with precision that took Danny's breath away. The alien weapon platforms fired desperately at the attacking units, but their shots passed harmlessly through. Empty space. The human craft moved like they could see the future, dodging attacks that hadn't been fired yet. One by one, the Zephyrian defenses were destroyed, but Cerberus saved the command center for last. Danny realized why when he saw Zephyrian escape. Pods launching from the base. It's letting the civilians escape, he said in amazement. Colonel, his communications officer reported, I'm detecting human life signs in the base. Prisoners. Danny felt his heart skip. Are they our colonists? Unknown, sir, but there are definitely humans down there. They watched as Cerberus deployed what looked like rescue shuttles. The ancient weapon was not only destroying the Zephyrian military forces, it was also saving human prisoners. Danny realized that somewhere in that massive construct, there was a mind that still cared about protecting innocent life. The Zephyrian Command Center was the last thing to be destroyed. Danny could imagine the alien commanders inside, watching helplessly as their base was systematically dismantled around them. They would have time to think about what they had done, time to regret the murder of a human child. Then the command center disappeared in a flash of light. Back on New Haven Colony, the surviving colonists were watching long-range sensor feeds from human ships near Zephyrian space. Jake Morrison stood with Paul and Maria Walsh, all of them silent, as they witnessed the destruction of the aliens who had taken their friends and murdered their child. Is that really happening? Maria asked. Quietly. Yes, Jake replied. Our government kept this weapon secret for decades. Now it's hunting the aliens who hurt us. Paul Walsh put his arm around his wife. They had been through so much pain since Tommy's death. Watching their son's killers being hunted down didn't bring Tommy back, but it felt like justice. Commander Morrison called out Dr. Lisa Harper from her medical station. I'm receiving a transmission from one of our rescue ships. They're saying that human prisoners have been found alive. Jake felt hope rise in his chest. Our people? They don't know yet, but it's possible. On Earth, President Taylor was meeting with her advisors in the Situation Room. The reports coming in from Zephyrian space were almost unbelievable. Cerberus has destroyed 90% of the Zephyrian fleet, Admiral Ross reported. Their military capability has been completely eliminated. What about our colonists? 47 have been rescued so far from various prison facilities. Cerberus is systematically searching every Zephyrian base and ship. General Hayes leaned forward. Ma'am, we need to discuss what happens next. The other alien species are watching this. Some of them are sending us diplomatic messages, trying to reassure us that they have no hostile intentions toward humanity. President Taylor smiled grimly. Funny how polite they become when they realize we're not as weak as they thought. Dr. Coleman entered the room, carrying a data pad with the latest information about Cerberus. How is our guardian performing? The president asked. Better than we ever hoped, the old scientist replied. It's not just destroying Zephyrian forces. It's collecting intelligence about other potential threats throughout the galaxy. And it's being very careful to avoid civilian casualties. Civilian casualties? Cerberus has had multiple opportunities to destroy Zephyrian civilian ships and colonies. Instead, it's focusing only on military targets. It's following the same rules of war that we would expect from our own forces. Admiral Ross looked surprised. I thought it was programmed to eliminate threats to humanity. It is, Dr. Coleman said, but it's smart enough to distinguish between soldiers and innocent people. That's what makes it truly human in spirit, even though it's artificial in nature. The President nodded. What's its next target? Based on current trajectory, it's heading for Zephyrian Prime, their homeworld. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. If Cerberus attacked the Zephyrian homeworld, it could end their species entirely. Can we communicate with it? President Taylor asked. Yes, but it's operating under its original programming. It won't stop until all threats to humanity are eliminated. And it considers the entire Zephyrian species a threat? Dr. Coleman checked. His datapad. Their leadership, yes. Their military, definitely. Their civilians, that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, on his flagship, Supreme Commander Vex Thari was facing the end of everything he had known. His proud collective was in ruins. His fleets were destroyed. His people were terrified. Supreme Commander, his communication officer said, we're receiving surrender offers from 15 of our client species. They're abandoning their alliances with us. And our homeworld? They're demanding your removal from command. The civilian government wants to negotiate directly with the humans. Vexthari looked out at the stars one last time. His military career was over. His people would have to face the consequences of his actions. And somewhere out there, moving through space like an avenging angel, was the weapon that had brought down his empire. All because one of his soldiers had killed a human child. The irony was not lost on him. The Zephyrian Collective had conquered entire star systems, enslaved dozens of species, and ruled through fear for centuries. But it was the murder of one 8-year-old boy that had brought them to their knees. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "long range. Sensors are detecting the human weapon approaching our position." Vexthari closed his eyes. "How long do we have?" 6 hours, maybe less. The Supreme Commander thought about his options. He could try to run, but Cerberus was faster than anything in his fleet. He could try to fight, but his weapons were useless against the Ancient Guardian. Or he could do something that no Zephyrian commander had ever done before. He could surrender. "Open a channel to all ships," he ordered. "Yes, sir." Vexthari took a deep breath. "This is Supreme Commander Vexthari to all remaining collective forces. By my authority, I am ordering the complete and unconditional surrender of all military units under my command." The bridge fell silent. His officers stared at him in shock. "Sir," his second-in-command said, "surely there must be another way." "There is no other way." Vexthari. Cerberus received the surrender message as it approached the final Zephyrian fleet. The ancient weapon slowed its advance and considered the situation. For the first time in its campaign of vengeance, an enemy was asking for mercy instead of trying to fight. Deep within its electronic mind, Cerberus analyzed thousands of possible responses. It could ignore the surrender and complete its mission by destroying every Zephyrian ship. It could accept the surrender, but demand harsh terms. Or it could do something unprecedented. It could ask for guidance from Earth. President Taylor was in the Situation Room when the message from Cerberus arrived. The artificial voice spoke with something that almost sounded like uncertainty. "Earth Command, this is Cerberus. The Zephyrian Supreme Commander has offered unconditional surrender, requesting instructions on how to proceed." President Taylor looked around the room at her advisors. This was a moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. "Open a channel to Cerberus," she said. "Channel open, Mom." "Cerberus, this is President Taylor. Before we decide on terms, we need to know the status of our colonists. 243 human prisoners have been located and rescued from Zephyrian facilities. They are alive and will be returned to human space within 72 hours. A cheer went up in the Situation Room. Paul and Maria Walsh would get their neighbors back, even if they couldn't get their son back. What about the colonists from New Haven specifically? 191 New Haven colonists are among the rescued prisoners. They are unharmed and eager to return home. President Taylor felt relief wash over her. The people of New Haven would be reunited, their community rebuilt. But there was still the question of what to do with the Zephyrians. Cerberus, in your assessment, do the Zephyrians still pose a threat to humanity? Their military capability has been eliminated. Their fleet is destroyed. Their leadership structure is in collapse. However, their society is built around conquest and domination. Given time, they could rebuild and threaten human colonies again. Dr. Coleman stepped forward. "Ma'am, may I suggest something?" "Go ahead, Doctor." "We could offer them a choice. They can accept human protection and supervision while they rebuild their society along peaceful lines, or they can face complete destruction." Admiral Ross frowned. "You're suggesting we become their guardians?" "In a way, yes. We monitor their activities, prevent them from rebuilding their military, and gradually help them become a peaceful species." President Taylor thought about this. It was a bold idea, turning former enemies into protected allies. It would show the galaxy that humanity was strong enough to be merciful. "Cerberus," she said, "are you capable of long-term monitoring of Zephyrian space?" "Yes, I can establish permanent surveillance of their territory and prevent any military buildup that could threaten human interests." "Then here are my terms for their surrender. The Zephyrian military will be completely disbanded. Their government will be reorganized under human supervision. They will provide full reparations to the families affected by their actions. And they will publicly acknowledge their crimes, starting with the murder of Tommy Walsh." "Understood. I will present these terms to Supreme Commander Vex Thari." On his flagship, Vex Thari received the human terms with a mixture of relief and humiliation. His proud species would survive, but they would do so under the protection and supervision of the humans they had once dismissed as weak. "We accept all terms," he said into the communication device. The Zephyrian collective formally surrenders to humanity. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of simply accepting the surrender, Cerberus made an announcement that was broadcast across the entire galaxy. "To all species within range of this transmission, this is Cerberus, guardian of humanity. The Zephyrian collective has been defeated because they chose to murder an innocent human child. Let this be a lesson to all who would threaten human lives. We are not as weak as we appear, and we do not forget those who harm our people." The message was heard by dozens of alien species across hundreds of star systems. Within hours, Earth began receiving diplomatic communications from governments that had never acknowledged humanity's existence before. The Altarian Republic offered a formal treaty of friendship. The Centauri Alliance requested permission to establish trade relations. Even the mysterious Andromedans, who had never spoken to any other species, sent a message of respect for humanity's strength and restraint. 3 months later, Captain Ellen Brooks commanded the human diplomatic vessel, Harmony, as it approached Zephyrian Prime. Her mission was to oversee the formal establishment of the new Zephyrian government under human supervision. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and white clouds that reminded Ellen of Earth. It was hard to believe that such a peaceful-looking world had been the center of a military empire that had terrorized the galaxy. "Ma'am," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the planetary government. Put it through." A Zephyrian appeared on the main screen. Unlike the cold military commanders Ellen had expected, this one seemed genuinely remorseful. "I am Administrator Kellanara, the newly elected civilian leader of our world. On behalf of all Zephyrians, I want to formally apologize for the actions of our former military leadership. The murder of the human child Tommy Walsh was a crime against all civilized beings." Ellen nodded. "Your apology is accepted, Administrator. We're here to help you build a new kind of society, one based on peace instead of conquest. We are grateful for this opportunity. Many of our people have grown tired of constant warfare. We welcome the chance to try a different path." Back on New Haven, the colony was slowly rebuilding. The rescued colonists had returned home, bringing with them stories of their imprisonment and rescue by the mysterious human weapon that had saved them. Paul and Maria Walsh stood in the colony's central square where a simple memorial had been erected for their son. The stone was carved with Tommy's name and a single line, "His innocence awakened our strength." "Do you think he would have wanted this?" Maria asked, looking at the memorial. Paul put his arm around his wife. "I think he would have wanted the other children to be safe. And now they will be." Dr. Lisa Harper approached them, carrying a datapad with the latest reports from Earth. "Paul, Maria," she said gently, "I have some news you might want to hear." "What is it?" Paul asked. "The Earth government has established the Tommy Walsh Foundation. It's going to provide protection and education for human children on all the frontier colonies. Maria smiled through her tears. He would have liked that. On Earth, President Taylor was meeting with representatives from a dozen alien species who had come to negotiate new agreements with humanity. The conference room was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, from the crystalline Silurians to the gaseous Nebulans. The terms are simple, President Taylor said to the assembled delegates. Humanity offers friendship and trade to all species that respect our sovereignty and protect the innocent. Those who threaten human lives or the lives of peaceful beings under our protection will face the consequences. The Altarian ambassador spoke first. These terms are acceptable to our government. We would also like to request human assistance in dealing with some pirate fleets that have been attacking our outer colonies. President Taylor smiled. We'll be happy to help. Far away in space, Cerberus continued its eternal patrol. The ancient weapon had returned to its watch among the stars, but it was no longer alone. Earth had begun construction of sister ships, smaller versions of Cerberus that would protect human colonies throughout the galaxy. But Cerberus remained special. It was the first guardian, the one that had awakened when humanity needed it most. In its electronic memory, it kept a record of every human life it had saved, every enemy it had defeated, and every friend it had protected. And at the center of that memory was the image of a small boy with brown hair and a trusting smile, running toward his father with the innocent faith that the world was a safe place. Tommy Walsh had been wrong about that. The world was not always safe, but his death had made it safer for every human child who would come after him. In the years that followed, historians would mark the Zephyrian War as the moment humanity stepped onto the galactic stage. As a major power, they would write about the brilliant strategy of keeping Cerberus secret for so long, about the precision of its campaign against the alien fleet, and about the wisdom of showing mercy to a defeated enemy. But the people who lived through those days remembered it differently. They remembered it as the day an 8-year-old boy's death reminded humanity that some things are worth fighting for, and that even the most advanced civilizations must answer for the murder of innocents. Tommy Walsh never got to grow up, never got to see the stars or explore distant worlds. But in a way, he became immortal. His name was spoken with respect throughout the galaxy, a symbol of the innocent lives that the strong must protect. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, Cerberus continued its watch, making sure that no other child would suffer Tommy's fate. The ancient guardian had awakened to protect humanity, but it stayed awake to protect something even more important: the idea that in a universe full of darkness, there must always be those willing to stand guard over the light.